Hey guys, Bizorke here. I'm doing a little test in GATS to determine the way that players load and unload. And as you can see in the upper left-hand corner on the blue player's screen, I have a counter showing the number of players that are currently loaded. So I've just replaced the user's name with that number, and it just counts the number of players that are currently loaded at once. And notice that the red guy is standing pretty close to the blue character, and nobody else is really on screen, but the number keeps flickering between 1 and 2. Now, because nobody else is on the screen, that does seem a little strange. There should be either 1 or 2. And here's a third person who came up. It's very hard to do these experiments because people will sneak up and kill you. Anyway, I've had a lot of that. So now for the second experiment, on the screen to the right, if you look in the upper left-hand corner of that screen, it will show when this specific player is loaded. So guest elephant is the player on the left, and when guest elephant is loaded, my name on the right will be true. Otherwise, that name displayer at the top will just be hidden. So you can see that once I move a certain distance away, this thing just flickers nonstop. And what that means to me is that the player is continuously loading and unloading, which is strange because the players are both standing still and the distance between them is not changing. The problem with this is that creating a new player is a relatively expensive option. You want to do that as little as possible. And so in the next experiment, I'm going to measure the actual cost per second of creating a new player. Here in the upper left-hand corner of the left-hand screen, you can see a number representing a windowed average of the bytes per second that are being sent to the game client to instruct it to load a new player. So here you can see it fluctuating. It goes between half a kilobyte and about a kilobyte per second, and there's really no one else on screen except for this blue guy who's just slightly off screen. It's kind of strange that it's fluctuating, but I'll tell you what's in this data. It tells you the player's ID, what kind of gun they're holding, their color, their position, including their angle, the size of the player, the HP that the player has, the armor that the player has, how many bullets their gun can hold, and a couple other things. So see, this is what I'm talking about. You don't need to be told what the player's gun is every single update. Once the player has loaded for the first time, that should be cached. Now, I originally thought that this was happening because I was off screen in a region where I was loading and reloading again. But then this kind of really surprised me. I noticed that as I approached the red guy, the number of bytes per second didn't really go down all that much. I was expecting it to fall down to 0 now that I'm not being unloaded. This tells me that the blue guy most likely is indeed being loaded and unloaded again, regardless of whether or not he is on screen. So what I've done now is I've appended the script that updates the display name so that it will also print to the console every single time a player either gets updated, destroyed, or created. Now let's just pause the video and analyze some of these results. Just as a reminder, there were 3 characters visible on my screen at the time of this capture. There was the Taikota 2 guest dog, and there was me, and I'm not even sure what my username is because it was being masked by the bytes per second. Now at the top of this sample, we have the server instructing us to load 3 new characters, Amos, Boy 7, and DBK8. After that, we have an update for the 2 visible players. And then right after that, the server is telling us to delete 5 players. 2 of those players were just loaded. And then it tells me to delete this mystery guest. This player does not have a username because they are not currently loaded. So the server is essentially telling me to unload 2 players that are not even loaded. Next, we have an update for a character that's off screen. Fair enough. But then in the very next update, the game is now telling us that we need to reload the 3 players that we just removed in the last update. Now, if you go over the rest of these updates, it's pretty much more of the same. It's just a pattern that continues. Now, something kind of jumped out at me here. I noticed that there was a number 1 in this data, and number 1 obviously isn't a valid username. So this is raw data that the server sent to me for this character's username, and it was in the username field. Could this be the mysterious Herobrine of GATS? Nobody knows, not even the developers. Oh my god, guys. Do you know what this means? Like, this is actually scary. There's players that are being deleted that don't have names. They're not even loaded, but the server is trying to unload them. And next thing you know, this player with the name number 1 appears. This is a mystery that is going to be worth investigating in the future. Sorry guys, I have to say I'm going to have to cut this analysis a little bit short because I'm really creeped out right now. Feel free to take a look at the rest of the results. Note that the number that's being displayed in the upper left-hand corner right now is actually the number of bytes that are being sent for all updates, not just loading a player. And so, it goes up to like 8, maybe 10 kilobytes per second that are being downloaded from the server, which really isn't that much. It's totally playable. I don't know how much lag this is honestly creating. It might even be none. And even from the server's perspective, worst case scenario, there's no way it's going to be sending more than half a megabyte per second. But guys, I have to say that I am super creeped out right now, and I need to go hide under the blankets, and I am not coming out, so do not disturb me. All the evidence is there for some type of ghost player, and I clearly see more numbered players in the updates, but I am too creeped out to check them. So goodbye.